Hey guys, so today I want to go over the kettlebell swing, some basics, go over the proper mechanics of a kettlebell swing, but also go over some common errors and some ways to correct those errors. Alright, so the kettlebell swing, the two most common errors we'll start with are that people squat too much on the swing as opposed to hinging or deadlifting on the swing. And the second most common error is that people muscle it up, thinking of the swing more as a lift as opposed to what it really is a projection, a ballistic movement, right? So we're used to weight training, we're used to lifting weights. So kettlebells, you're not really lifting all the time, right? You're doing lifting, swinging, and getting some momentum behind the movements. So real quick, I'll go over how a proper swing looks, and then I'll break down the common errors. So from the side, I'm gonna start shoulder width distance. I'm using a 24 kilo kettlebell. I would say for most men, this should be around the standard. Women, somewhere between the 12 and 16. And if you're a beginner and you haven't messed with it, men should be using a 16 as well. But you want to go heavy. You always want to go heavy with a swing, and I would say with most kettlebell movements, you want to go heavy. And the reason for that being is because you're working a very functional movement. And so you're using a lot of muscles all together. It's not like when you're on a side bench machine or something like that and you're doing an isolated muscle. It's totally different. You're using a bunch of muscles at the same time. You need to do a heavy weight or it's kind of useless, all right? So we're going to start for 24 kilo. I'm going to make a triangle formation, right? My feet are shoulder width distance and the kettlebell's around the triangle distance away from my feet. So I'm going to come down. I'm going to hinge back. Slight bend in the knees, however much I need, and then I'm going to grab the kettlebell, and from here, on straight neutral spine, hike it back, and then project forward. From the front, same thing, shoulder width distance, triangle formation with the kettlebell, hinging back, slight bend in the knees, and then park it down safely. So if you saw when I did the swing, again going back to the squat versus hinge. So the squat, when I come down for a squat, I'm getting a triple flexion. I'm going hip flexion, knee flexion, ankle flexion. So I'm coming down, throwing my hips out, and then coming down for the bell, okay? So a squat, I'm getting a lot of bend in my knee, a lot of bend in my hip, a lot of bend in my ankle. A hip hinge, I'm getting most of the bend at my hip. I'm getting a slight bend in my knee, slight bend in my ankle. So squat is here, a hinge is here. Okay, so I'm hinging back. That creates a lot of extension on my hamstrings, glutes, and back muscles. That's what we want. We want to extend the posterior muscles so that when we finish, we project and tighten up hard style all those posterior muscles. That's what's generating the power. That's what the swing is working on, all together as one unit. So again, squat, this is a squat. Hinge, this is a hinge. And so how much you bend your knee is really relative to your flexibility, right? So I have pretty tight hamstrings, so I might want to bend my knees a little bit more. Someone who has a little bit more extension here, maybe a little straighter on the legs. But as far down as comfortable that I can reach the bell and still not have my shin bones shifting forward, okay? So I'm drawing out my hips, slight bend in the knees, and that's where I want to go with the swing. The second most common error with the swing is the muscling up, okay? So again, like I said, people are used to lifting weights. They don't really think about projecting weights. So that's something you need to learn or unlearn rather. So with the muscling up of the arms, if you go heavy, it's not going to happen as much, right? Because if I'm going heavy on this and I try to lift it, it's struggling. You see the wrists are acting all crazy, they're bending. I'm struggling. I can't lift this weight. I can't do this front raise. But most common in the gym, you'll see this. People think these are swings. So they're doing something like this. And that's kind of what they saw in a YouTube video. Hopefully they weren't watching this one, and hopefully they will. So you want to get the power from the posterior muscles to be doing the work. Again, if that's the case, and now I'm projecting, right, I can get that weight up easily. I can even do a one arm, okay? So don't lift, squeeze, and project through the back muscles, okay? If you feel like your shoulders are burning, you're probably lifting too much, okay? If you feel like my recommendation for women, 12 to 16 kilo, men 16 to 24 kilo. If you feel like you can't do those because it's bothering your arms, you're probably lifting too much, okay? So get more hip behind it, get some more glute contraction, okay? Other common mistakes are that people go too high with the kettlebell, okay? So they'll project it back and do something like this, or even come all the way up there in no man's land. So you risk injury when you come up that high, especially if you don't have a lot of shoulder stability, right? You're coming up here, your shoulders aren't that stable yet, you risk hurting yourself. So you don't want to do that for that reason. But also, you don't want to come too high because then you rest, right? So when I come up here, I get some time to breathe. But if I'm just projecting forward, coming to this hard style lockout, and then back into it, very little time to breathe. There's very little time that the kettlebell is what we call airless or weightless rather. So I want to make sure that I'm not coming up here, giving myself too much rest, but rather coming here, getting two straight lines. A straight line from the end of my hands through my shoulder, and then from my shoulder to my heel. That's a hard style swing, okay? Another common thing is that people, they're hiking it back too low, okay? So it's better to show it from the front, or actually I'll go with a lighter kettlebell just to not injure myself. So they go too low. When you hike back a swing, imagine you're hiking it back to a quarterback, right? You got a football, hike it back to the quarterback. You're gonna do it nice and tight in between your groin, okay, inner thigh. That's where you wanna hike the kettlebell, all right? And make sure that your chest is out so your spine is neutral. If you go too low, then you risk compromising your spine, putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where you can get injured, okay? So, too low swing, this is how an incorrect swing will look. So I'm going too low, and then I'm popping up. Going too low, popping up. And I see this all the time. People hurting the back. So a lot of pressure is going to the lower spine. So if you see from the side angle, incorrect swing, going too low, look at my spine. And this is me actually trying to work to neutralize it. It's not a good look, okay? So you want to, again, come in nice and tight. The correct variation, once again, hike it real tight, and then project it forward. Cool, so that's some basics on the kettlebell swing. If you have any more questions, just contact me. Thanks.